God puts us in nations, in places, not by mistake, but to do a job. What if we opened our eyes to the needs of our colleagues, of our leaders, of our subordinates, and we were a priest on their behalf? Welcome to the Repurposing Business Podcast. My name is Brett Johnson.
And I'm Lynn Johnson.
And we're going to be talking about how to get our business into God's business. Our subtext is Let My Business Go, and we'll have guests from around the world. So thank you for joining us this week and every week on the Repurposing Business Podcast. Welcome to the Repurposing Business Podcast. My name is Brett Johnson.
And I'm Lynn Johnson.
And today we're going to talk about what sort of attitude we should have when we're in a situation that really is a crunch. I mean, right now we don't know how...
That's important.
We don't know how long this COVID-19 thing will go on for. Today you read some people were saying 2 years.
Yes. I don't know who those people were. Word just flashed across. I was like, that is a long time. I don't accept that.
Other people are thinking 2 days, 2 weeks, that it'll all go back to normal. That said, we do go through seasons in life that are actually quite dry seasons, that are difficult seasons. And so the question is, what sort of attitude do we have? What do we do during those seasons? And I think each of us goes through dry seasons. In the book Convergence, I speak about the University of the Desert. For Moses, I'm reading about Moses at the moment. That was 40 years. I mean, it was a long period of time. For other people, it's fewer years. Recently, a guy came to me and said that people had told him that he was going to have a lot of money and God was going to use him in the area of finance. And it's been 5 years now, he said, and my finances haven't taken off. I said, only 5 years.
I think you might be a Job's comforter when you say only 5 years, and someone's hoping you're going to say, oh, it'll soon be over.
Yeah, it's 5 years is not a long time with God, of course. But there are particular steps we can take during seasons of drought, seasons of difficulty. And one of the seasons that we went through was in obedience to God. Now, it might have been my stupidity, but I thought it was in obedience to God. We actually sold one of our houses back in 2000, roughly 1999. And then we thought, well, pretty quickly we'll be in another place. And 1 year went by, another year, 5 years, 10 years. And we were in a season where...
18 years.
Yeah, where you were without a house. And during that time...
Well, I had a home, but we didn't have a home we owned.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we
so
stayed
very
stayed in wonderful places.
Yes.
Yeah, big places, nice places, just wonderful provision, just amazing places. And yet somehow there's a longing in one's heart actually to own a place. And
especially when hospitality is one's primary motivation. And you have to keep packing up and moving and packing up and moving.
Yeah, I thought about that quite a bit. And I find, we have this 10P model that we have. Last time we talked about the 10 Fs, but the 10 drivers of corporate impact, product, purpose, people, planning, and so on. And one of the drivers is place, right?
Yes.
And there are 2 drivers of impact that really get people in the gut. A real visceral thing. One of them is place.
Yes.
My conclusion then is that this is because we have a longing in our hearts for a place in eternity. In other words, our desire for a home on earth is actually a reflection of our desire for a home in eternity. And Jesus said, as you well know, that he goes to prepare a place for us. But we were in a season when you didn't have your own place. We were in lovely places, but rented places. And we were in Emerald Hills in Redwood City. And what did you decide to do in regarding a place?
So I think that was most probably one of the most difficult times on this whole place journey, because we were trusting that God was going to actually give us our own place. And we were saying, no plan B. We had to leave because our landlord was selling the house or had sold it. We had to move, and we were saying no plan B. So it was a very stretching time as we packed up everything, not knowing where we were going to be. And I ended up writing a blessing to read over myself. I'd been so encouraged by Arthur Burke's books, Blessing Your Spirit, and I then decided I'd write a blessing over myself with regards to our housing situation. And I just did it more as an exercise of faith, just recording the things that I was going to trust, put it in the first person. But as I read them out loud over myself, I felt myself being strengthened. So I've reread them and re-looked at them and through the years, and I'm very grateful for the work that God has done.
I remember Lynn having them stuck up on the kitchen window. I remember looking out the window, it was there. And it's a good thing to speak about that. And one of the things that I think is a parallel into where we are now, there's quite a few people that are looking at their business and saying, well, will this business come alive again? And we went through difficult periods just prior to that. We had gone through lawsuits, issues with books, issues with clients, issues with staff, a whole variety of different things. And one day Lynn said to me, this must be God, because I don't think the devil can be so smart. Remember that?
When things get that difficult where you go, only God is smart enough to orchestrate so many things going wrong at the same time. Well, that's how I felt at the time.
I thought I've got a good wife who recognizes that. And at that time, when we had that challenge, that difficulty, I remember sitting one morning at the window. There were two chairs and I was looking out. That's where I normally read my Bible, and I was sitting there. And there was a persimmon tree growing out there. And the persimmons lose their leaves. And then you'll find there's some dangling fruit sitting on there, almost like they look like Christmas lights on the tree.
Little orange Christmas lights.
There's 5 or 6 of these lights. There's no leaves. And God says to me, when is a business dead? And I'm thinking,
don't ask me that question, God.
Don't ask me that question. I'm not interested in having this conversation. So I ignored the conversation. And I put it off because obviously I thought God was telling me the Institute is dead. And God had spoken to me very clearly about starting the Institute. And then we prayed about that with many people. We got people together and we birthed this thing, as it were. And we weren't trying to do it just because, we thought we've got a good idea. Let's start something. I mean, it actually came out of a word from God. So now what happens if God says the thing that was birthed, it's over? I felt a little bit like Abraham with Isaac, when he was 12 years old. And so there we were. And I didn't want to have the conversation. But a while later, I went and I said, okay, God, let's talk about this persimmon tree over there. When is a business dead? And he said to me, a business isn't dead until I say it's dead.
A business isn't dead until I say it's dead. That's a very powerful word. And maybe that's a word for somebody today that's listening or watching us, that your business is not dead until God says it's dead.
In fact, recently we had a story in South Africa. One of the clients we've worked with there, one of our regular consultants, has been working with them. They're a manufacturing business, and the bank came to them and said, in essence, your business is dead. And so Errol said to, who's our consultant, said to this chap, look, remember what Brett taught us. A business isn't dead until God says it's dead. You go and ask God, is this thing dead or not? Now, it's interesting. Remember when the child had died and they came to Jesus and they said, the child has died. And Jesus said, the child isn't dead. The child is sleeping. And now, technically, the child was dead. But Jesus saw the situation differently. So this guy went back and asked God, is my business dead? And God said, no. So then he stood in faith. He stood in faith and spoke out positively. The child isn't dead. The business isn't dead, because God says it's not dead. And then miraculously, the orders started flowing in.
Wow, it's amazing, because God specializes in resurrection. That is actually his name. I'm the resurrection and the life. If you walk around and say, hi, how do you do? My name is Resurrection. This is like key to who Jesus is, his resurrection and life. And so when he speaks the word, with that word comes power, with that word comes life. And that's really, really encouraging.
In about 2001 or so, when we were in this difficult situation, we went to a conference and somebody came to me and said, does the word resurrection mean anything to you? And because I just think that God is giving you a ministry of resurrection. Now, and then the reply was, you replied, you said, well, his screensaver is Lazarus come forth. Lazarus come forth, because that's what Jesus said when Lazarus had been lying there stinking for 3 days. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to look at a business when the world says this thing is dead, this body is dead, it's a hopeless situation.
Yeah.
And you're able to say, okay, God, what's your perspective? If it's dead, we'll leave it dead.
Yeah.
But if this thing just looks like it's sleeping, if you say it's not over till God says it's over, then we need to kind of gather ourselves up and we need to say, okay, God, I'm going to come in alignment with what God is saying about this business.
Yeah.
I'm not going to come in alignment with the financials, the bank manager, the tax man, etc. I'm going to come in alignment. And sometimes you look like a fool doing that, but that's what we need to do.
And sometimes part of the resurrection is that what comes out of it, it's like a butterfly, a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, metamorphosis. Maybe the new thing is not going to look the same as what you currently have. So that's another question, because sometimes we might want a resurrection in the form of Lazarus was resurrected and he still looked like Lazarus.
Right.
We don't know if he had some other heavenly properties. I don't know. But there's another way that God brings resurrection, and that in a sense is where something new and different is birthed out of something. And so maybe God gives us in our business something fresh and new and different.
Yeah, we've actually seen that happen quite a few times recently with the whole COVID-19 crisis. So you've seen some companies actually adapt their business. And an obvious one is mask making. Some people jumped on that early and said, okay, I'm going to start making masks. I was making this, I was doing that. I mean, even Louis Vuitton, I think it was, started making gowns. I'm sure they're very fashionable gowns. There's a whiskey factory in Tennessee that's now making hand sanitizer. People said, okay, so what's my asset and what do people really want?
And they pivoted really quickly on that. And I think that's good, but that is actually just something that's happening in this season. And I think for those of us where we're not able to do that, it's asking the question, okay, God, what are you going to have my business look like going forward? What new innovations do you have? What new inspiration do you have for me? And so actually asking God for that and knowing that his mercies are new every morning, and not only his mercies, but his creative downloads. He's not run out of ideas. He's not short of innovative things that he can share with us. So to actually lift up our faith and come towards him.
That's right. Yeah, yesterday I started putting together a group of people who are possibility thinkers, because it's interesting when you gather with entrepreneurs, they see opportunities in every situation. Now, there's a difference between being opportunistic.
Yes, and that's important.
And going after real opportunities. So some people, there's price gouging on PPE masks and so on. So there's people being opportunistic, it's people. But there are opportunities, new opportunities to serve. And so the question is God broadening the audience that you can serve with what you have in your hands?
Yes.
And so how do you take what's in your hands and how do you serve more broadly is one of the questions. And
can I just add a comment there that I think those of us that have an opportunity to actually support people, maybe it's not our business, but we're the consumer. I think it's really good for us to be sensitive towards what are our brothers and sisters offering? What are they offering for sale? What is their service? What is their product? And we might be the person that connects in by bringing a new potential supplier or bringing a new potential partner, or saying to our friends, oh, you should actually purchase this from this person. I mean, I think the Jewish people and the Muslim communities as well really come alongside and support each other. And we as believers should be looking out to see how we can promote each other's business. Kim Wilson is doing Good King, and it's this wonderful healthy snack. Well, I should be buying Kim's healthy snack rather than buying somebody else's healthy snack. Just as an example. But
Right.
how do we actually come together and intentionally support one another at this season? I mean, Brett and I have been so grateful for when people have referred others to us or have taken what we've been doing and shared it with other people. It means so much to actually have that type of support. And this is what we all should be doing to each other.
It's quite interesting, Lynn. I've been looking at different pieces of advice that people are giving during the crisis. Some people are saying do this, some people doing that. And the normal business advice is preserve cash, keep your liquidity, cut down your expenses. I read a prominent Christian organization put out something, and one of the first things they're saying is get rid of the extra staff. You know, in other words, it's the business as usual thinking rather than the kingdom business thinking.
What does the kingdom look like?
And in the kingdom, you're trying to say, how do I bless others in this time? How do I serve others in this time? How do I take care of others? And yet there have been other businesses who are saying, I have this excess product. Yesterday, I was just reading about a business in Colorado that grow lettuce. And they said to people, okay, you can drive up, you can get it free. One for you and one to give away.
Yes, I love that. I love that. That's amazing.
Because otherwise
we've seen that in South Africa as well through the ministry that your sister Sally's doing, life community service, and people coming and bringing things. I think the human nature to hoard when there's a difficulty or potential difficulty is very deeply rooted. And the kingdom is the opposite of hoarding. And so how do we actually make sure that we share when we get opportunity to do that, rather than holding on for the rainy day, but actually trusting God. And not to be foolish, but let's have a flow there.
Lynn and I were among the last people to visit an orange farm in South Africa just before we left South Africa before the lockdown. And our friend Ruben Richards over there and his co-farmers were there. And now they can't export. I mean, the whole farming industry, much of it has been shut down. There's no external shipping and so on. And so what they've done is they've turned the thing around and they've gone to other farmers and they've said, donate your oranges because each orange contains the vitamin C's and the nutrients that will help fight off the coronavirus. And we'll be
generally make one healthier.
And so they have come up with, I think they could feed 100,000 people for 7 months with an orange a day.
It's quite amazing. They were asking people to donate to help to ship the product from the Clanwilliam area into the areas where they're most needed. So
sometimes a crisis also causes you to rethink your customers, and those customers are close by. You know, they're not necessarily just in the European market. They're right. You know, who is your neighbor? How can you love them? How can you care for them? And are there ways to meet the needs of people? So one of the things that, you know, you can either go into hunker down mode, or you can say, okay, somebody else is going to have a bigger need than me. How do I bless other people? How do I use this situation of lack? And it's quite interesting because in the Old Testament, there was a story of Jerusalem being besieged. And there was no food. I mean, it was a terrible situation. And outside the camp were 4 lepers. Remember?
It's quite a remarkable story.
Amazing story. And they decided, look, we're going to die anyway. So let's go to the enemy camp. I mean, if they give us something to eat, we die hungry. But they went there. And of course, and Tommy Tenney tells the story so beautifully about how God put amplifiers, speakers, microphones at the feet of these 4 lepers, and the enemy army heard this massive army coming and they fled and they left all of the spoils.
Absolutely everything. And then initially the lepers, after eating as much as they could, started to stuff their pockets with the treasure and work out where they could hide it. And then suddenly they thought, why are we doing this? Back there is a town full of people that are literally dying of starvation. And so they ran back and went and told the good news, and the city gates were opened. And out they came, and the one person that died at the city gates was the official that had said, no ways could this be, when the prophet said that there actually would be food. He disagreed. And he got stampeded. But they headed out there actually to pass on the good news. They didn't just hold on to it for themselves.
So we have a choice with our businesses, with our careers right now. what are we going to listen to? We are going to either listen to the voice of God. What's God saying about your career? And he might say, your time at this company is over. It's time to start your own business. Or this venture that you're engaged in was for a season, but I have something else for you. Trust me. Listen to me. It could be the situation. Or it could be that God says, this situation can turn around in a day. It can turn around on a dime. And we can either hoard when we're in a situation of crisis, or we can be generous and we can flow through. And so it really takes a trust in God to be able to be giving out of our own need even sometimes. And
last time we talked about margin, and I think one of the things we need to be doing now is keeping margin so we can listen to others and pray with others, because that takes time, and there are a lot of people suffering, a lot of people afraid, a lot of people concerned about the future. And one of the gifts that we really have to give to people is that we will put our own busyness, our own agenda aside to really ask, really listen, and really pray, so that we truly can be the body of Christ to one another at this time.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us on this podcast. We greatly appreciate it. And next time we'll actually dig into this question of how do you understand people's needs in a time of crisis? Sometimes the things that they're talking about, their fears, their difficulties, sometimes they're masking over things with jokes, with other things. But at the base of things, there's actually a point of need. And Lynn is wonderful at asking the third question. And so maybe next time you can tell us how to do that, how to really understand somebody's needs, listen to where they are, and then just look for the opportunities to bless them, to encourage them. Scripture says that if we refresh others, we ourselves will be refreshed. Right. We all need refreshing in the season, so maybe we need to learn how to better refresh others. Well, thank you for joining us.
And there are resources at brettjohnson.biz.
Quite correct, brettjohnson.biz.
And share that with other people, brettjohnson.biz. Encourage other people to listen to this podcast and access the resources that we have there.
Yeah, there's also a weekly blog, and there are some
lots
things
of wisdom
that we'll put
here.
out.
Lots of wisdom.
Yeah. So I'm going to put out an article called Ashes to Assets, which is the story of Nehemiah and the 10-step process that he went through. And so this is a little booklet that you can read, and we'll put that out there so you can download it and print it off yourself. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week.